So okay, everybody, welcome back to another one-on-one. Today we have a very special guest. Not only is he considered a great guitar player in a legendary 80s hair metal band. That's right, I said hair metal, and we don't see much hair there. However, he's been a good buddy of mine for 14 years. He's a great, great guy, and it's Joey Allan from Warrant.
What's up, Dave?
Hey, what's going on, Joey? How are you, man?
Legendary hair band and all that. I mean,
it's an iconic band for a lot of people. I came to see you when you came to Boston to play. You played down there in like New Bedford or something, and you guys put on a hell of a show. It was a great show. The person I brought loved the show. She thought you guys sounded great. It was great, and I thought Robert Mason did a great job. He was great.
Yeah,
I hadn't seen the band with him, so I was like it was impressive, I have to say. Not that I'm your buddy and I'm like, oh, hey, listen, because I would tell you, I'd be like, yeah, you know.
Yeah, get a new front of house engineer.
Well, I would sit and tell you, I wouldn't hold it back. But no, it sounded good. Everything was great.
Good.
So what's been going on with the band? What's been happening?
Wow, I mean, the last time we made any new music was 3 years ago. We made a record called Louder, Harder, Faster that Jeff Pilson, who's the bass player and MD for Foreigner, produced. And Jeff comes from the Dokken era, you know, using Dokken forever. And so we did that through a company called Frontier Records, and then we toured behind that for about a year and a half. And then last year, the first record turned 30, Dirty, Rotten, Filthy, Stinking Rich. So we did about 60 dates behind that. We called it the Dirty 30 Tour. Our agent actually came up with that, which was kind of clever. And then this year, the second record, Cherry Pie, turns 30. So we're just firing up the Cherry Pie 30th anniversary tour. It actually doesn't turn 30 until of all dates 9/11, believe it or not. But
wow.
Yeah, and kind of we're doing a pre-30, 30th anniversary tour for this year for that. But, all new set, all new staging, all new everything. So it's kind of like all the muscle memory's gone, and we're playing songs we haven't played in 20 or 30 years. It's crazy.
Yeah. How is that? You have to go and reteach yourself? Do you go back and listen to the record and like, what the hell was I doing there?
Exactly, and sometimes it gets so bad. You go to, okay, it's an A, so I must have been in this position. You go to like fifth position, and you're like, nope, it wasn't there. And you literally go, because you remember, what you did, but you don't remember where you did it.
Yeah.
And if it was a punch, the rhythms are easy, but the solos for me are always, was it punched? Did I go from this fret up here all the way down here in lightning speed? And then once you find it, you're like, oh, it takes a second,
Right. And you're like,
once you find the position of where you started or whatever. So it literally was like that for me, because I hadn't played a few songs in so long that I had to remember. And at one point I had to actually go to YouTube and look at where my hand was in a video.
Oh, that's excellent.
It's
funny because I do lesson videos on YouTube a lot, and
right.
I'll watch, and when I have to, like, if I see someone else teach it, and then I'm like, let me watch the band like the year they put out the record live, and I'll see where his hands are, and then I can figure it out. Because
it's a lot easier once you have a starting point. So I mean, it sounds silly that I'd have to do that, but when you don't play something for 20 some odd years, I mean, that.
And how many dates are you doing for this Cherry Pie thing?
Probably another 60. So
that's great.
Which is healthy for us. I mean, everybody's healthy in the band. We all get along. We have 4 original members left. Unfortunately, Janie Lane's passed, and Robert, like you said, Robert Mason's doing a fine job with us. He's been with the band, I think, 11 years now.
Yeah.
And we're playing the whole record front to back. We're the only one we're not playing is the cover, which is Train, which Ricky Medlock, who's a friend, might be a little bummed about, but we'll see if we work that into the set or not.
I didn't realize you guys covered the Blackfoot song.
Yeah, we did that. That was the only one we covered on a record, And then, when we saw Ricky, we were down in Florida. He got up on stage and jammed with us, and he's a friend, real good friend of the band, and of course, and Leonard Skinner doing really good now, and
Sure.
so we'll see if we bring it out or not. It just depends, because we got to fit it into 75 minutes, and then there's other stuff off the first record that are hits that people want to hear live. So it's kind of like you gotta pick and choose what you do.
Yeah, when I was a freshman in high school, I remember Train, and Highway song were like, everybody was so up into Blackfoot then. I liked them. I even liked the 80s song that he did, Teenage Idol.
Yeah.
The MTV hit he had. I always liked that song.
Yeah, I mean, an untapped band for some younger players. So check out some of that Blackfoot stuff. We're pretty rocking.
So now I know a little bit about your past. You were an employee over at Jackson and Charvel back in the 80s. And tell me, yes. So did you just join the band and things? How did that come to fruition?
So I was in a number of bands in Orange County, California growing up. And then I was painting fences one day, and I'm like, wow, I watched TV, and TV had all those DeVry University, get your engineering degree. And so I went actually to one of those, and in 18 months I got an AS degree in electronic engineering. And I was looking for a job the old way we looked for a job, which was by a paper, right?
Sure.
And sending out resumes in the mail. And one of them said Jackson Electronics, looking for a bench tech, and it was the Jackson guitar logo. And I owned the number 136 Randy Rhoads, so I knew the logo. I mean, who didn't know? Sure. But I thought, whatever, maybe they just ripped off the logo. So I got an interview, and I went out there, and I walked in, and it was Charvel Jackson in San Dimas.
Oh, that's
and
great.
I basically sat down to interview with Paul Gagan, who was the engineer that had come over from Fender. At the time, there was an exodus from Fender, and Paul Gagan left, Paul Rivera left, and Lee Jackson left, which what all those guys have done. And Paul Gagan was the guy at Jackson that did all the active guitar electronic design.
Sure.
And at the time, he was designing amplifiers because Grover wanted to get into amplification sales.
Oh.
So I got the gig, needless to say. I told him basically, hey, I'll work for free, which I didn't have to, but
right.
I'm sure it was my first negotiation, which didn't start off so well. But I got the gig, and I worked there for a few years and had a great time up until when it moved over to Ontario. And I do believe a company out of Dallas got involved. IMC, maybe, International Music Corporation, or ICM, whoever it was.
Kai.
Yeah, Kai Ross.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Right. So, and then I literally at that same time, Warrant was, I got into Warrant.
Yeah.
So.
And they were already a band, or they were forming?
Yeah. Warrant started in '84. I was in a band prior to '84 with Eric, the rhythm guitar player in Warrant.
Okay.
So I lived in Hollywood, and we basically ran into each other on the corner of Sunset Doheny, and they were looking for a lead guitar player.
Wow.
And we had a history, and I said, I'm into it. Let's go. And they were doing well on the circuit. Yeah, right across from Gil Turner's.
Oh, right, exactly. Right.
Yeah, right there by the Rainbow, and right where it all happened.
Sure.
That must have been like,
the club right there.
87. Yeah, it was Gazzari's and the Rainbow and the Roxy and all that right there. So that's basically how I got into Warrant. So at the same time, the Jackson thing stopped, and I was in Warrant, and I went and worked for, I was a bench tech for another company for a while. But once we got a record deal in Warrant about a year later, I was free of my daily duties at
Sure.
Yeah.
And now, where were you guys playing that you got a deal? Where was it like that someone found you guys?
We were doing really well on the circuit. We would play the Roxy and the Whiskey, but the big place we played was out in the valley called the Country Club, Chuck Landis's Country Club. And it's still there. I think it's a church now, or maybe
okay.
Shopping
Where in the
market.
valley is it?
It was on Sherman Way in Reseda, right out there. So we would play like a Friday, Saturday night there, and then on Sunday we'd go over and either play the Troubadour or the Whiskey or the Roxy. And we do that once a month.
The Troubadour's a nice place to play.
Yeah, absolutely. Got a lot of vibe. I mean, Elton John, everybody that's been through there, Diamond, everybody. So we were playing a gig at the country club in Reseda, and our singer Janie had the chicken pox. And we had, at that time, we were drawing really well, and we had a bunch of people coming. And Ron Oberman from Columbia Records was there at that show, and that's the show that did it, believe it or not. It was an abbreviated show because Janie didn't feel well, and did it, yeah.
That's awesome. And then that's it. Then you guys was signed, and
that was the beginning of madness. Yes.
And it's funny because everything comes around full circle now, because you figure the women that were listening, that were coming out to shows, were probably like, in their 21, and now they're, their kids are grown and they want to go out again, and now you guys are filling up shows, and the whole younger generation of people get turned on to stuff. I see people that, like kids on Facebook that are into Kiss, and I'm like, I was into Kiss when I was that age, and Kiss was already, you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah. I mean, it's the demographics varies widely. It depends on where we play. If we play all ages, we get younger kids, and if, obviously, if you play a fair, you get the whole smorgasbord. We do, casinos, state fairs, arenas, clubs. I mean, we do it all. So it's good to see. I think people just want to hear live music, And it's really
the music's it's brutal. And have you guys got your music like in video games at all? Because I think that's like one of the best avenues.
Yeah, I mean, we've got, I think, Cherry Pie. Cherry Pie's in 27 movies, and then it's in guitar. It's in the Guitar Hero thing. It's it's all
cool,
over the place, And we were just, one of the songs, which was a B-side, which is a song called Sure Feels Good off Cherry Pie, was just in a Super Bowl commercial, in the Walmart commercial.
Oh, wow.
I think the Bill and Ted thing, where Ted comes into the phone booth, there's a riff playing behind that, and it sure feels good off of Cherry Pie. So.
Oh yeah, no, I know the ad. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's it's a little boogie riff.
It's like Alex Winter plays older him and younger him, right? The guy that was
exactly. Yeah, the riff playing behind that's me jamming on a little boogie riff called "Sure Feels Good." So.
Oh, nice.
It's out there. It gets placed quite a bit, and. We have a lot of fun on the road. We all, like I said, we all get along, and the band's 110% live. So we've got our 3 and 4 part harmony vocals going, and it's a lot of fun, man.
Nice. So you're not using any help in the backing vocals?
No. If you hear somebody out of key, it's one of us.
Right.
Sometimes it's painfully live, but most of the times it's. I mean, look, we've been playing the same music for 30 years, so we've finally gotten good at it, I like to say.
Very cool. A couple of years back, and when I say a couple, I mean we're going back now almost 10 years, you and I did a sizzle reel, because you were, at that point, playing with G&L, and I was working on a sizzle reel for a television show idea, and we went down, you and I, to, Fullerton, and shot it. And then, I had somewhat of a falling out with some of the guys there. And then I went and saw you play, and I'm like, oh, he's playing a new guitar.
Yes.
And it's a company called GMP. Why don't you tell everybody? Because I have a lot of guitar. These people all have severe gear acquisition syndrome.
Oh, I used to have that until now I have a 7-year-old son, so I don't have the gear acquisition syndrome anymore. But if you do suffer from gas, there's a company out of San Dimas called GMP. Some of you may or may not know them. Genuine Musical Products is what it stands for. And a guy that I worked with at Jackson Charvel in the mid '80s by the name of Dan Lawrence is the owner. Him and his wife Kim. The actual brand was owned by someone else, a guy named Cameron earlier, but Dan bought the brand and the logo, I don't know, 10 years ago maybe. And he hand builds guitars in San Dimas, about less than a mile away from the original Jackson Charvel factory.
Wow. And now the Jackson Charvel, technically, wasn't that Glen? Because I talked to Grover. I used to work with Grover years ago, and he was telling me that it was actually in Glendora, but the P.O. box across the street was San Dimas. So everyone just calls it San Dimas. I remember.
I mean, it's just an industrial park, and
it's
still there. So I mean, Grover. It sounds like Grover would say something like that. Grover's kind of kind of a technical guy when it comes to stuff like that. So whatever Grover says, okay, great. I mean, they're right next to each. It's like the difference
No, I
between
know. I'm just
Anaheim Hills, you know. It's like, oh, I live in Anaheim Hills. Oh, you live in
right.
Anaheim. Whatever.
Right.
But anyways,
you always know you're in trouble when you see in the ads in the papers when they say it's Beverly Hills adjacent.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's funny. But GMP, I mean, he's got a CNC machine. It's him and another guy. Dan did all of the graphics for Jackson and BC Rich in the 80s. So a lot of our graphic guitars that we had from BC Rich when we were signed there with Bernie Rico.
Sure.
When Bernie, back in the beginning, Dan did all those graphics. He's an artist, but he's also an artisan. I mean, he's a luthier. He makes guitars and he makes great guitars. So, I was talking to CC DeVille from Poison, and I was at the time G&L, kind of the same thing. I was having a falling out, and the McLarens are wonderful people, and I had a great time there. But it was time to make a move. So I was looking at GJ2 when Grover was doing that thing. And then I talked to CC DeVille from Poison, and he said because I was like, hey, are you interested in GJ2? And he's like, I'm doing GMP with Dan Lawrence. And I'm like, wow. And I just called Dan, and here we are. I've been with Dan 5, 6, 7 years now, and I've got 2 guitars coming right now. It's a new product called a Solus. It's a set neck strat-ish type of thing, or like SOLUS.
Right.
Kind of back to the Jackson Soloist.
Exactly. I was just going to say set neck strat. Yeah.
Yeah, but a little more rounded, just a different vibe altogether with his product. But look, the product, I've had the same guitar on the road for 5 years. I take 2 out. I've got a boat with all the band stuff in it. And I literally go on stage and play 75 minutes a night with the same guitar, and the thing's like a brick. Mm-hmm. The neck rarely moves. It's just, it's a mahogany body, set neck. It's brilliant. So I love their product, and they're in San Dimas. You can find them at, I think, gmpguitars.com, and Dan's a great guy. He's doing well, so very boutique-y. All
right, everyone, you heard that. If you're interested in looking at new guitars, GMP out in San Dimas. Very cool.
San Dimas, bro.
Get your Alex Winter on, right?
Right.
I'm trying to remember, what was the G&L you used to play? Was that just like a legacy? What were you playing with G&L?
I had this, Invader. Wasn't it called Invader?
Gotcha.
Yeah, and basically I pulled all the pickups out of it and just did the Ed Van Halen, where I had one single hum with a volume knob and then a Floyd. Yeah. So the cavity was open because they did a nice thing on those guitars where they didn't have a pick guard.
Right.
And I still have that silver one, and I have an ASAT. I have a red one. They've all got names. The silver Invader's Coupe, because we played a show with Alice Cooper, and I've got the pass they gave me for the days on the back of the Floyd cover, and then the red one I had it looks like ruby slippers, so that's Dorothy. That's the ASAT.
Oh, very cool. So it's that red like sparkle.
Yeah. It looks like a ruby slipper, and then I've got a George Fullerton that I had built that's cream with the old mint pick guards and pickup covers.
Yeah, very cool.
So it's got that, and then the neck, they did this really cool thing where they yellow the neck, So
let me ask you, when you were out on the road, I didn't realize you have a 7-year-old now.
28-year-old to 7.
Oh, really?
Yeah, quite a gap there.
Yes. So when you're out on the road, and do you go gear hunting? Like, let me see if there's any pedals or anything that's interesting in this place or this.
Every once in a while, we'll go out to pawn shops, and we did it more a while ago. Now it's just not as often anymore. And I stopped. I got rid of having a 7-year-old. Gets rid of the gas. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
I mean, I've got a bunch of stuff. I'm actually thinking about thinning my herd a little bit. At one point, I had over 60 guitars, and now I've got about 20, maybe less. But I'm just, I don't know if it's the 7-year-old that's keeping me from doing. I mean, look, I see stuff all the time. I'm like, I'd love to have one of those, I just had a friend send me a list of guitars, and there was a 67 SG on there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, dude, I was just, and the deal was right, and I'm like, oh my God, my wife would kill me. So,
Right.
For fear of my life, I think the gas is gone.
That's when you say, it's a graduation present for our 7-year-old for when he graduates high school.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah.
You're
He's
thinking
going to end up
because
with him and my daughter. He and my daughter will end up with it all.
yeah, because by then in 11 years it'll probably be worth the price of a car.
Yeah, I've got some good stuff. I'm certainly don't have the Rick Nielsen collection.
You know what's funny? I see a lot of guys, especially like Joe Bonamassa, who's on YouTube a lot, and a lot of these guys go out and they love the vintage gear, and it's all about vintage gear. And for me, I was thinking about it the other day. I look at it more like if I'm a carpenter, I want the best, most balanced hammer that I can find. You got a vintage hammer? Keep your fucking vintage hammer. I don't need it.
Right.
So I get it. So I do so let me just show you this guitar. I bought on Craigslist a $300 Mexican Strat. I took the neck off. I sold it for $140 right back on Craigslist the day after. Bought a Warmouth neck, sold the whole pickups and the pickguard assembly for $100. So I'm only $60 into the body and all the hardware.
Right.
And then I bought a Warmouth neck, and I bought this Wenge neck, and I put with an ebony fingerboard stainless steel frets.
Right.
It's got a harsh V neck. It's a harsh V neck.
Yeah.
And I have the top few frets scalloped, so you can see here that
right.
And I put DiMarzio area pickups of 58, 58, and 54. And this is my main guitar. And it plays better than any custom shop Fender. I mean, you remember the shop I managed. It was like we had every Fender custom shop. I must have played them all. So I know when I'm playing this, I'm like, this is...
I mean, I worked with Mike Eldred at Jackson, and he's the one that started that whole custom shop thing with Cruz and Todd Krause and all those. And Todd Krause, who's a builder over there, and I worked at Jackson back in the day.
Nice.
So we still keep in touch. And look, those guys make beautiful instruments. And
is Shannon over there still?
Mike Shannon and Pat McGarry, yeah. Mike Shannon is doing all the Jacksons. I mean, that's Mr. Jackson. I mean, Grover likes to... But Mike was the wood shop guy making all the cuts. So yeah, they're all friends, and we all see each other once in a while and laugh, get together and have a beer. And but yeah, I know what you're talking about. I was when we were with Ibanez during the Cherry Pie tour in like 90, 91. All the stuff was coming out of the pro shop where they built, Vi's Gym,
right?
And that heart-shaped double neck he played with Roth on tour.
Oh, is that is that North Hollywood or something where that shop is?
I don't know where it is anymore. I couldn't tell you, but Mace Bailey and then a guy named Mike Lippy, who's no longer with us, who started Lippy Guitars, build all those guitars. But we did a photo shoot, and there was like 30 Ibanez sitting around, and there was this Japanese one. It was the ugliest thing in the world. It was like a leopard skin thing. And I picked it up, and I plugged it in, and it sounded like, it was just God,
right?
Whoa! And I'm like, hey, can I have this? They were building custom, and they're like, sure, take it. And I had it painted flat black, but it was just like what you just showed me. I mean, it was just this, Chinese-made Ibanez that was just killer.
Yeah,
yeah. It ended up getting ripped off, which sucks. But yeah, I love that. I used that on our third record quite a bit, actually.
Now, when you played over at the Showcase, is it called Showcase? Is that what it was called?
Yeah, I don't remember the name of the place in New Bedford. We're actually going to be back there this summer playing some festival.
Oh, cool! I'll come down. I did though is the thing is I took a peek at your amps and stuff. I saw you were playing a 900. Is that what you were playing?
It was probably a 900 backup there, but what I play is I play a Hughes and Kettner Grandmeister.
Oh, okay. Well,
so I'm a Hughes and Kettner endorser. Yeah, I've worked with Hughes and Kettner for 15 years now. So I've got a Triamp and a Puretone, and I was actually the guy when Hughes and Kettner for a while was distributed by Pearl Corporation, Pearl Drums.
Yes.
Who I've worked for about 15 years now, And I was actually the one that got Allan Holdsworth hooked up with Hughes and Kettner, because Allan, was, when he was alive, he lived out here in SoCal, and through Jim's music in Irvine, the Yamaha had stopped making his amp, and he was looking for something, and I took him, when I told the Hughes and Kettner guys I had, Allan Holdsworth on the line, they're like, we'll send him one of everything, and I went down to his condo with one of every Hughes and Kettner,
What did he like?
He ended up using the Trentera, or the Zentera, excuse me, which was the programmable head they had for a while.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then he went to switchblades, and he used the 212
Really?
cabinets. So I think he used
I
two
like those.
Yeah, and it's funny story about Holdsworth. So we were buddies and hung out, and I took him to a photo shoot with one of our friends for an ad we did with him, and then one day he calls me up, he goes, "Hey mate, do you have any acoustic simulators?" And I go, "Well, I got this one. It's not that good." I go, "I don't use it anymore." And I go, "But you can have it. I'll bring it over to your house, and you can just have it and try it out. But you're probably not going to like it." And I drove over to his house, had an ale with him, and gave him this pedal and said, "Here you go. Good luck." And not more than 10 minutes out from driving home from his house, he calls me up. He goes, "You know what, mate? You're right. It sucks. You can have it back." And I'm like, "No, give it to somebody."
He lives close to you, doesn't he? Wasn't he out by where you are?
Yeah, he lives about 40 miles. He lived about 40 miles from me down in San Clemente at the time. And,
okay, yeah. Do you know Pegler?
Who?
John Pegler?
No.
He was a rep that was good friends with, he was also, I think he was from the same area that Holdsworth's originally from, but Holdsworth's just a monster player. I mean, he is just, he was ridiculous.
Yeah, losing him was a tough one. He was, I've had many a time with him where we were in my truck kind of, stuck driving somewhere, and I would just ask him all kinds of questions, and he always had a great comeback. And he was just a genuine person that he would hear somebody saying, having a problem with gear or having a problem with recording process, and he would pipe in and say, "Hey, try this. This helped me one time." And he was probably the most helpful guitar player I ever met in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard stories from Pegler that he was like the nicest guy, and that he genuinely, when people were making comments, when people made comments about him being rude to them or something, Pegler was like, he genuinely didn't know who like certain artists were. He's not really aware of like jazz. Yeah, and it was. I was like, really? He's like, oh yeah, I guess Lee Ritenour came up to him at an AM show one time, and Allan had no idea who he was, and I guess it was.
He's just he was unassuming. That's the whole beauty about it,
Yeah.
Like a bro.
So great.
And he didn't how much we love his music, he just didn't have that whole vibe. He was just a player,
Yeah.
Truest form. Great stuff.
I mean, you can watch some videos of him. There's him with, I think it's called the Soft Machine, and he's playing that old SG Les Paul, the custom one.
Right.
And he is tearing that thing up in like 74, like it's nobody's business. I mean, at that point there, I don't know how people didn't stop and say that's the greatest guitar player in the world right there. I mean,
yeah, he's definitely in the top 3 for me.
Yeah, I mean, so let's talk about that. I wanted to pick your brain because a lot of people on my channel, I talk a lot about albums that are like the most overlooked albums and the best albums. Give me like 3 records that you can't live without to make who Joey Allan is today as a guitar player or as a musician, I would say.
One of them's got to be, of course, I mean, everybody's going to answer this one, Van Halen's first record.
Okay.
I think I was in junior high when that came out, and like nothing before, It must have been what Hendrix was to guys that were in the 60s listening to music or playing guitar, for kids that were in the late 70s, mid to late 70s. Gary Moore was in a band called G-Force.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember the tune. Something Knuckles, not Bloody Knuckles, White Knuckles.
White Knuckles, yeah.
Yeah, it's his version of Eruption.
Okay.
So I'd have to say that record. And then what's another good one? Band called Tigers of Pantang and a John
Sure.
Sykes.
Oh, Sykes.
Yeah, so well, really all three of them from Europe because Ed Van Halen's Danish, right? So
Sure.
all European guitar players, so to speak.
Well, Sykes is all. I mean, I love that Thunder and Lightning record. That to me was always like
That
That's a monstrous record.
Yeah, it's hard to pick any best Thin Lizzy record because they're all so good. And Thin Lizzy had a huge impact on me.
Yeah.
I mean, we could go through bands. I mean, Cheap Trick had a huge impact on me just because of the songwriting of Rick and that
Awesome.
band.
I love
Yeah.
that first album a
Yeah.
lot with He's a Whore and Mandicello. I love that record.
Oh, dude, that's great. Hot Love, all that stuff. We
Absolutely.
do gigs once a year with Cheap Trick, and I'll come off stage, and Rick will be standing there, and he's like, I don't play like you. And I'm like, dude, I go, they were the first band I ever saw live. They opened for Kiss. And I go, all this stuff and the way I play, it's all your fault. He goes, I don't play that way. I'm a songwriter. And I go, of course you don't play that way, but you're like the huge impact on my life,
In fact, somebody in a band recently asked me if I wanted to do She's So Heavy, and I'm like, there's a song by Cheap Trick that has a riff that I actually like better, Heaven Tonight. I'm like, let's do Heaven Tonight instead. I love Cheap Trick. The first 4 albums. I love the Dream Police album. To me, that was I love that record.
And then one overlooked one is All Shook Up, which George Martin produced.
All Shook Up. Is that the one that starts with "Well, I can't stop"?
Yep.
I love it. Love that album.
Yeah,
and Just Stop Back is on that album.
Yep. All that killer stuff. I mean that. So I mean, I grew up in that era. Same stuff. Thin Lizzy. And I was into Kiss when I was young. I'll
tell you this: you have one Kiss album, and you can't pick a live one. Can't be anything live. One album. What is it going to be?
Oh. I mean, I can't pick a live one, huh? Probably Dress to Kill.
Everyone would pick a live. That's just too obvious.
I mean, Destroyer's great, but I think Dress to Kill. I mean, it was 9 songs, and they were just all killer.
I think Dress to Kill is 1,000 times better than Destroyer. I'm not a Destroyer. In fact, the second 3 Kiss albums after Alive, I do not like. But I love the first 3 albums, and I could accept any. I always bounce back and forth between the Kiss first album and Dress to Kill.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard Anthrax's version of "Lover All I Can" with Gene and Paul singing the harmonies with?
No.
And I think it was when John Bush was still in the band. Were you an Anthrax fan at all?
No, I never. I got into Priest and Maiden for a long time. I was big, British Steel, Unleashed in the East, Screaming for Vengeance, and then I saw Maiden when Paul Di'Anno was in the band, and I've toured with Maiden, and I'm friends with Nico, and so I never got into any of the newer stuff or the thrash stuff. I played in a band for about 3 or 4 or 5 months with Lars Ulrich from Metallica.
Oh, okay.
He lived in Newport Beach for a while and lived at a place called Park Newport, and I jammed with him and a guy named Lloyd Grant, a Jamaican guy on guitar. I think Lloyd might have played on Hit the Lights on that Metal Massacre record.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
Yeah, but I wasn't in Metallica. The band, we were thinking about calling the band White Lightning at the time when I played with Lars. So I get it. And
well, I'll tell you, growing up, I was never an Anthrax fan. I liked the album with John Bush from '91, the one with Only, because it was more of a pop record. But I'd have to say, they got the old singer back, and they put out an album called For All Kings. And then there's an album a few years earlier called Worship Music, which might be 2013 or 15. I think it's the 2 best albums in their whole career. I tip my hat to them. That I think if you check out like a song called Breathing Lightning by Anthrax, I was really surprised. This is like the same group here's a group of guys that I thought never hit lightning in a bottle, and I'm like, now I think they're killing it. I never liked them as a kid.
Yeah, perspective's everything. I like Armored Saints. I'm a John Bush fan, and
Love them. Can you deliver?
Yeah, so I'm into that. But that was LA band. So it's all perspective and where you're at what time you're at there.
Yeah. Well, I think you got a few years on me, because if you were in middle school, you say in when Van Halen 1 came out, and for me, I think 13 is a very big age for musicians, because songs that came out when you were 13 stay with you. Like, there's something about that. And for me, when I was 13, I can tell you, Van Halen's Women and Children first album came out. I remember clearly Judas Priest, British Steel, and Point of Entry. And
right.
I love Screaming for Vengeance the most. But also, I remember Crocus, I'm a Winning Man. I used to love I'm a Winning
I remember
Man.
Headhunter, because Rob Halford sang on that. I remember that record. I got
that.
Headhunter
had Eat the Rich.
If you look at my phone, all that stuff's in there. In fact, when I'm getting ready for a show in whatever city, I got a little Bluetooth speaker. I put it in the bathroom when I'm showering, and that stuff's just rotating. It just gets me fired up.
Screaming in the night. Screaming in the night. Yeah. But I remember that song, Winning Man, from 1981. It was the album before that one. And it was so...
Metal Rendezvous? Is it on Metal Rendezvous?
No. That album had... Our Love. Our love will never die. That was after Eat the Rich record, the Headhunter album. This one was called... Okay. It was after One Vice at a Time. I cannot recall the name of the record, but the song was called Winning Man. And it was like that it almost reminds me of The Zoo by Scorpions.
Oh, does it have talk box on it?
Yeah, no, it doesn't, but it has that bump, 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 bump. It's like that that pulsating groove.
Yeah.
I love the Scorps.
Good old the Scorps. Matthias is a hero too. That guy.
Awesome.
Blackout. That record's just get out of here, guitar wise.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Now, do you listen to anything like other than the hot? Because I know you're a rocker, and I know because obviously like Glenn Noyes, like you guys like I always and Kevin, Glenn's old guitar player, Kevin. You guys all love that, like. You guys are all cut from the same. It makes me smile, because I love that shit too. Like Michael Schenker Group and Late UFO, like Obsession and Lights Out.
Yep.
And I get a kick out of you guys about it. But do you listen to anything that people would say you like this?
I don't know. I appreciate good musicians. So like I like stuff like Amy Winehouse. A lot of female singers, some older stuff, Etta James. I mean, Adele, I think she's a great songwriter, got an amazing voice. So, I don't have them on my phone, but when it comes on, I don't turn the channel. You know what I mean?
Right, okay.
Pink, any of the people that have true talent that can hit some notes, singers usually. Yeah. I mean, you asked me about guitar players. Anytime Bonamassa plays, I'm just like, the jaw drops, Keith Urban, great songwriter. I'm not a big country guy. If you ask me about country, I'd go back to like Chet Atkins and Jerry Reed, Glenn Campbell. Like my dad would put that in front of me when I was a little kid, and I never got it until I got older and listened to it, and I was like, holy shit, listen to Glenn Campbell play,
Yeah, he's great.
So just I think I don't have the blinders on musically. Everything to me, if there's talent out there, I take a listen,
Yeah.
So I don't discriminate. If it sucks, what sucks to me might not suck to you. You know what I mean? So
no. But what I meant was like more like, would you like know stuff like, were you like a U2 fan when they came out? Because you came out in the 80s with your
Joe
band.
Jackson. I love Joe Jackson.
Great. Awesome.
Dwight Twilley.
Oh, Twilley. Girls, was that his song?
Yeah. There's Sweet. I mean, who doesn't like Sweet and all their
love Sweet.
Steve Priest wrote songs and
great. And actually, the first bunch of songs was written Scott. By what is it? Scott.
Yeah, the
no, Andy Scott wrote "Love Is Like Oxygen," but I think Mike Chapman, the guy who produced like the Blondie stuff, and He also wrote wait, what was that? He wrote
Ballroom Blitz and all that. Did he write all that?
Ballroom Blitz, and he wrote he had a big hit in the late '70s. Oh, he wrote Exiles, I Want to Kiss You All Over.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Mike
Wow.
Chapman, his name was. Yeah, he produced a lot of people back then. And then the good Fox on the Run was written by The Sweet. That wasn't written by him, which I love that song.
Yeah, so just, a toss between songs and musicians, man. I never discriminated if I got into something. Like I heard that Joe Jackson song, Pretty Women Walking with Gorillas Down My Street. And I'm like, wow. And I went out and I bought the record and I got into it, and then I put on Screaming for Vengeance after it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
Eddie Money. I'm a huge Eddie Money fan.
Yeah, it's great.
First
he was
records
awesome.
Eddie and great stuff. So, yeah.
What's your favorite tune off Screaming for Vengeance?
Probably Electric Eye,
It's great. It is.
Or Screaming for Vengeance, or, it could go, the big one, You Got Another Thing Coming, probably wasn't my most favorite. I don't want to say it's my least favorite,
I always liked Riding on the Wind. I thought that was a great one.
That was a great one, too. Devil's Child. That whole record's killer,
It is good.
They could do that whole record live. I went and saw them a few years ago, and Glenn's not there, and KK's not there, but they sounded just killer.
Really? I saw them I saw them in 2010 at the Gibson Amphitheater, and KK was there and Glenn was there, and they were doing the British Steel record.
Yeah, you can't. I saw them, and they were just smoking. They played center. They played all the old stuff and some of the new stuff. That new record they had was killer. The one that Firepower.
Yeah, a buddy of mine really digs that record.
Yeah, that's a good one. So
when I was in high school, I used to come home from school and I would put on the Unleashed in the East album, and I would try to play note for note every one of Glenn's solos. Yeah, I was a much bigger Glenn Tipton fan, I have to say. Although now looking back, I think KK was a lot better than I gave him credit for.
Yeah, I think that it's being in a two-guitar band, there's, when you've got two guys and you do what you do, one guy's always technically more proficient than the other guy, but the other guy might have more feel, might have a better, maybe tone or sound off his fingers, but when you put the two together, you can't mistake it, and that's the whole thing about Priest and Maiden for that matter, those British metal bands, is that the combination of the two players together makes the sound.
Yeah. Well, in Riding Like the Wind, when they trade off the solos, I always thought the whammy stuff was KK and that Glenn was doing all the crazy leads. Then I watched some old videos recently and I'm like, no, each one starts off doing their own whammy and each one's doing their own leads. And I actually was like, oh, I was giving Glenn all the credit for those sick KK runs. I was like, wow, what the hell was I thinking? I had no idea. As a kid, we didn't have what kids have today. If your kid decides he wants to play guitar, the world is open. You got YouTube. You got people showing how to play. We didn't know that stuff growing up. Someone's like, oh, learn the Rain song. Who the hell knew Jimmy Page was tuning his guitar fucked up on every other song? Nobody. We were all trying to play him in standard tuning.
The way I used to do it is I'd put the record down on the turntable, and I'd turn it off so it wasn't running, and I'd run my finger around it and slow it down so I could hear what at least how many notes. Right. Obviously, it would be slower and lower. There was nobody showing you how, and if you didn't, I didn't read a lot in the beginning. I could read, but I'm not fast enough. So yeah, it was just that's the way I learned.
Today's world, it's like you can just go watch someone teach it, and then if you don't like the way that person teaches it, you can watch somebody else, and they're going to teach it completely different, and you're still going to be like, that's a lot easier than the way we did it. And when we first got Tab, remember that magazine came out, Guitar for the Practicing Musician, and we first got Tab, and I remember seeing like some Ingve stuff, and I'm like, how the hell would he ever play it in this position? It doesn't make sense. And then a few years later, I took lessons with a guy who teaches out of Berkeley, and a guy named Joe Stump, which I'm sure you might know who Joe is. Yeah. And Joe showed me how to play this stuff, and I was like, Oh, like those magazines were doing me a huge disservice trying to read that tab when it's all 3 notes a string running up and down. You know, it was like,
Yep. You know
but
what's crazy is do you remember Starlicks? They were cassettes.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I got the Randy Rhoads Starlicks. You know, when he came out and all that, I had all those Randy Rhoads riffs in my back pocket. Not all of them, because some of them were too hard for me at the time, but some of the rad ones he did on that first 2 Aussie records, for sure.
Oh, it was great. And I was never a big fan of the Randy stuff that he played on Quiet Riot. I could do without. I wasn't.
Yeah, I got those records, and I didn't embrace them as much as it's kind of hard. Once you had the Aussie records, it's kind of hard. That bar was set so high, you know.
Agreed. Yeah. Have you read the book? Have you seen that Bob Daisley put out a book where he basically goes into the whole making of those first 2 records and all the stories behind it?
I didn't know that. The last one I read KK's book. I see you got the Ace Frehley No Regrets. I read that.
Oh yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So I read them. I read the guitar books, but I should probably get the Bob Daisley. It'd be an interesting read, I'm sure.
Yeah. I think so. It seemed like he was telling a lot of stories, like, because most people thought that it was Tommy Aldrich on drums on Diary, but it was really Lee Kerslake and just all that stuff and all the things going on with Sharon. Oh, so you could see that back there. You see, I got a 900 back there too. It's the 2100.
I see all the candy. I see all the candy back there.
DSL 50 watt JCM 2000 dual
all
rectifier.
Those cases, kind of looks like one room I got in the house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I want to get rid of it though. I want to just get rid of most of them, and I want to buy either some form of a clean 6V6 amp, and I like using pedals now in small amps. I don't want to break my back carrying stuff anymore. I'm lazy.
Yeah, I have a 36 watt. My Grandmeister's 36 watts. I have Cryogen 2 from Wathen Audio, and I have a 212, and I can play a club or an arena with it.
I mean, I didn't become a musician to do manual labor. It's like
once you start humping gear, you always hump gear. Come on.
Oh, it's the worst. I know. I had
to make it smaller. You know what I mean?
I had someone reach out to me, and they wanted me and my band to do his private party. So I quoted them a price, and they said, "What if we want you an hour less?" I'm like, "It's the same price." Well, they're like, "Well, that doesn't make any sense." I said, "It does. I play for free. You're paying me to schlep my gear."
And I got to pay the drummer who schleps the most.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh no, they laughed. They were like, "I get it. We'll pay you." It was like Maury and Goodfellas. They were like, I'll pay you today."
Very cool.
Have you still, on a side note, obviously we're winding this down, but have you spoke to Chris DeLisa at all? Do you know
I haven't
Chris?
spoke to Chris in a long time. Yeah, I do know Chris. He used to work for Sabian.
Yeah.
I haven't talked to Chris in a while. Last time I saw him, I had him over to the house, and he brought a bottle of tequila for the bar, and we had a shot and hung out a little bit, but I haven't talked to him in quite some time.
Yeah, real good guy. He used to always come into West LA and always just quote Goodfellas for like the whole day. And people would walk up to me and, "Why does he keep calling you Jimmy?" I'm like, forget it. Because they'd always be like, Jimmy, can I talk to you for a minute? Jimmy, they're wearing it.
Jimmy.
I want my money,
my
Jimmy.
band does that. Yeah, have a nice fare, Jimmy.
Hilarious. All right, well, awesome. I really appreciate you spending the time and giving us your time on this. And as always, let me know if you can give me a heads up when you're going to be in the Boston area. I will come to see you.
I'm going to be in the area. Can you see what I'm looking at? Probably can't see what I'm looking at.
No.
I'm looking at a schedule. Let me see. SCITUATE, Massachusetts.
Situate.
Site Situate on 8/8.
Oh, August 8th. Okay, I'll mark it down.
Yep.
8/8 in Situate.
Yep.
Okay, that's not far.
Yeah. So there you go.
Awesome. All right, Joey, thanks so much again for doing this. And
great to see you, Dave. Anytime.
Thank you so much. And everybody, as always, very good.
Don't let the sun catch you crying. The night's the time for all your tears. Your heart may be broken tonight, but tomorrow in the morning light, don't let the sun catch you crying.